They say never judge a book by its cover, but Patricia Gould, the head gate agent at JFK's Terminal 4, didn't just judge. She laughed. When a quiet man in a faded hoodie handed her a ticket that didn't look like anything she'd ever seen, she treated him like a criminal. She mocked him, shredded his pass, and called security to have him banned for life. She thought she was protecting the airline. She didn't realize she was humiliating the man who owned it. What happened next didn't just silence the terminal, it shut down the entire airport. The fluorescent lights of John F. Kennedy International Airport hummed with a frequency that seemed designed to induce migraines. For Patricia Gould, a 20-year veteran of Celestial Airways and the self-proclaimed Queen of Gate B12, the noise was just the soundtrack to her daily reign. Patricia didn't just check tickets. She filtered humanity. She had a sixth sense for upgrades, a nose for fake emotional support animals, and absolutely zero tolerance for anyone who wasted her time. Zone 1 only. If you are Zone 2, step back or you will be boarding last. I'm not repeating myself. Patricia barked into the microphone, her voice echoing with a sharp metallic tin. She adjusted her silk scarf, the blue and gold colors of Celestial Airways, ensuring her silver senior lead agent pin caught the light. The line of passengers for flight CA909 to London Heathrow shuffled nervously. Patricia had that effect on people. She was a tall woman with severe posture and eyes that scanned luggage sizes like a laser grid. Earlier that morning, she had made a sobbing college student pay $300 for a carry-on that was half an inch too wide. She felt no guilt. Rules were rules, and Patricia was the enforcement. "Excuse me, ma'am," a young woman asked, holding a crying baby. "Can we pre-board?" "He's really fussy, and does the baby have platinum status?" Patricia asked, her eyebrows arching perfectly. What, no? He's a baby." "Then he waits. Zone 4. Step aside." Patricia dismissed her with a flick of her wrist, turning her attention back to the computer screen. She loved the power. It was addictive. In the terminal, she wasn't just a middle-aged woman with a lonely apartment in Queens. She was the gatekeeper. You didn't get on the metal bird unless Patricia Gould said you did. The line dwindled as the final boarding call approached. The terminal was loud, filled with the chaos of a Friday evening rush, but a strange pocket of silence seemed to approach the desk. A man was walking toward the podium. He didn't look like the typical clientele for the London red eye. Most passengers on this flight were suits bankers or tourists drowning in designer luggage. This man was different. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and black, wearing a charcoal grey hoodie that looked comfortable but decidedly worn. His jeans were faded at the knees, and he carried a battered leather duffel bag that looked like it had survived a war zone. He stopped in front of the counter. He didn't rush. He didn't look at his phone. He just looked at Patricia with a calm, unnerving intensity. "Boarding is closing," Patricia said, without looking up, tapping furiously on her keyboard. "If you're not Zone 1 or 2, you missed the cut. Wait for standby." "I believe I have a reserved seat," the man said. His voice was deep, a low rumble that cut through the airport chatter. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Patricia finally looked up, her lip curling slightly in distaste. She scanned him from his scuffed boots to the hood of his sweatshirt. "Let me see your boarding pass." She sighed, extending a manicured hand, palm up, demanding. "And ID fast." The man reached into the pocket of his hoodie. He didn't pull out a smartphone with a QR code. He didn't pull out a standard paper ticket printed from a kiosk. He pulled out a thick, matte black card. It was made of heavy metal, cold to the touch, with 0 markings on the front, except for a single embossed silver constellation, the original logo of Celestial Airways from the 1960s. He placed it gently on the counter. Checking in for Isaiah Sterling. Patricia stared at the card. She had worked for the airline for 2 decades. She knew the gold cards, the platinum cards, the diamond elite cards. She even knew what the invite-only chairman's circle cards looked like. She had never seen this. She picked it up. It felt heavy like a slab of slate. She flipped it over. No barcode. No magnetic strip. Just a small gold chip embedded in the corner and a series of numbers engraved on the back 000, 000, 001. A laugh bubbled up in her throat, a harsh barking sound. "What is this?" Patricia asked, holding the card up between 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. "Is this a joke? Is this some kind of novelty credit card?" "It's my ticket," Isaiah Sterling said calmly. "Swipe it." Patricia dropped the card back onto the counter with a loud clack. "Sir, I don't have time for games. This is an international flight. Federal law requires a valid boarding pass issued by the TSA and the airline. This," she gestured at the black metal slab, "is a toy. Did you make this in your garage?" The people in the line behind Isaiah started to chuckle. A businessman in a tight suit leaned forward. "Come on, buddy, move it. Some of us actually paid for our tickets." Isaiah didn't turn around. He kept his eyes locked on Patricia. "It's a legacy access key. Check your system manual. Page 402, subsection C." Patricia's face turned red. The audacity. Not only was he trying to scam her, but he was also trying to tell her how to do her job. "Listen to me," Patricia hissed, leaning over the podium, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "I don't know who you think you are or what kind of TikTok prank you're filming, but you are holding up my line. Take your piece of scrap metal and get out of my terminal before I call the airport police." "I suggest you swipe the card, Ms. Gould," Isaiah said. He knew her name. He hadn't looked at her name tag. That detail pricked at the back of Patricia's neck, but her anger was moving too fast for her instincts to catch up. "You are threatening me!" she shouted, making sure the nearby passengers heard. She wanted a scene now. She wanted to make an example of him. "Sir, step back. You are disrupting a federal security zone." "I'm not disrupting anything. I'm trying to board my plane," Isaiah said, his hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. "Just run the card." "There is no slot for this garbage," Patricia yelled. She grabbed the metal card and jammed it aggressively into the chip reader of her terminal. Nothing happened. The screen remained static. "See!" Patricia crowed triumphantly. "Invalid, fake, fraud." She snatched the card out of the machine and threw it. It skittered across the polished floor of the terminal, sliding 10 feet away, near the feet of the waiting passengers. "Get your trash and get it out," she sneered. Next in line, Isaiah Sterling didn't move to retrieve the card. He stood perfectly still. The temperature in the immediate vicinity seemed to drop 10 degrees. The bustling noise of the airport faded into a dull roar in Patricia's ears as she realized the man hadn't flinched. "You shouldn't have done that," Isaiah said softly. The silence that followed Isaiah's statement was heavy, suffocating. The businessman behind him stopped checking his watch. The mother with the crying baby went still. Even the air conditioning vents seemed to pause their rattling. Patricia, however, was fueled by the adrenaline of conflict. She mistook his calmness for defiance. "I shouldn't have done that," Patricia mocked, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I hurt your feelings? This is an airport, not a daycare. You come here with a fake ID, you try to bypass security protocols, and then you threaten a federal gate agent. You're lucky I don't have you tackled right now." She grabbed her desk phone, her fingers stabbing at the buttons. "Security to gate B12. Immediate assistance required. I have a hostile male refusing to leave the boarding area. Possible mental health issue, very aggressive." She slammed the phone down and crossed her arms, a smug smile plastering her face. "They're coming. 5 minutes and you'll be in handcuffs. I hope you like the no-fly list, honey, because you're going to be on it for the rest of your life." Isaiah sighed. It was a sound of deep, profound disappointment. He walked slowly over to where his black metal card lay on the floor. The crowd parted for him instinctively, sensing that this man was dangerous, though they couldn't explain why. He picked up the card, wiped a speck of dust from it with his thumb, and walked back to the counter. "You didn't read the manual," Isaiah said, his voice level. "If you had, you would know that the legacy key doesn't work on the standard chip reader. It has to be keyed in manually. Code Omega-0 override." Patricia rolled her eyes so hard it hurt. Omega-0. Listen to yourself. You sound like you're in a spy movie. You're delusional. "Ms. Gould." A new voice entered the fray. It was Tobias Reed, the junior supervisor for the terminal. He was a nervous man with sweat patches on his shirt, drawn over by the commotion. "What is going on here? We're 10 minutes behind schedule." "Tobias, thank God," Patricia said, pointing a finger at Isaiah. "This man is harassing me. He tried to use a fake metal ticket, blocked the line, and threatened me when I told him to leave. I've already called Port Authority." Tobias looked at Isaiah. He saw the hoodie, the worn duffel bag, and the calm expression. Then he looked at the black card in Isaiah's hand. "Sir," Tobias said, trying to project authority, but failing. "You need to step away from the podium. We have zero tolerance for abuse of staff." "I haven't abused anyone," Isaiah said. "I asked her to process my ticket. She threw it on the floor." "It's not a ticket," Patricia screamed. "It's a piece of metal." "Tobias," Isaiah said, shifting his gaze to the supervisor. "Look at the card. Look at the numbers." Tobias hesitated. He was younger than Patricia, less cynical, but also terrified of her. She practically ran the terminal. But something about Isaiah's voice compelled him. He reached out and took the heavy black card. He turned it over. "Rund 0001. Tobias frowned. "I've never seen this." "Enter the code," Isaiah commanded. It wasn't a request anymore. "Manually. Omega-0 override." "Don't do it, Tobias," Patricia snapped. "Don't indulge him. The police are coming down the hall right now. Look." Sure enough, 3 officers from the Port Authority Police Department were power-walking down the concourse, hands resting near their belts. The crowd began to pull out their phones, sensing the climax of the drama. Karen Gate Agent versus Homeless Guy was going to be trending on Twitter within the hour. Tobias's hands were shaking. He looked at the police approaching, then back at the card. The numbers on the back were engraved in platinum. He felt a weird pit in his stomach. Just to be sure," Tobias muttered. He went to the secondary keyboard. "Tobias!" "Stop it!" Patricia yelled. Tobias ignored her. He typed in the sequence. OMEGA 0. He hit Enter. The screen didn't just beep. It went black. "Great!" Patricia threw her hands up. "You broke the computer." "He hacked it, officer over here." The 3 police officers arrived, forming a semicircle around Isaiah. The lead officer, Sergeant Miller, was a burly man who had dealt with enough unruly drunks to have 0 patience. "Sir, turn around and put your hands behind your back," Miller barked, unclipping his handcuffs. "Officer, wait," Tobias whispered, staring at the screen. "I said turn around," Miller shouted, reaching for Isaiah's shoulder. Suddenly, the screen at the gate and every screen in Terminal 4 flashed bright red. The standard flight information disappeared. The logos for Celestial Airways vanished. In their place, a single symbol appeared, a silver hawk clutching a globe. A loud, piercing alarm echoed through the entire concourse. Not a fire alarm, but a specific rhythmic chime that most employees had never heard. Ding-dong-ding, ding-dong-ding. Then a computerized voice, smooth but authoritative, boomed over the entire airport PA system, overriding the music and the boarding calls. Code Black initiated. Terminal 4 is now under direct lockdown. Priority 1 asset detected at Gate B12. All security personnel stand down and secure the perimeter. This is a Level 10 directive. The scrolling red text on the gate screen behind Patricia changed. It now displayed a single name in massive, bold letters. Isaiah Sterling. Chairman, Emeritus and Founder. Status Owner. Patricia froze. Her mouth hung open. She looked at the screen, then at the man in the hoodie. Sergeant Miller, who had his hand on Isaiah's shoulder, snatched it back as if he had touched a hot stove. He looked at the screen, his face draining of color. He knew that name. Everyone in aviation knew the name Sterling. It was the name on the side of the building. It was the name on the checks. Isaiah Sterling adjusted his hoodie. He looked at Sergeant Miller. "Am I under arrest, Sergeant?" "No. No, sir," Miller stammered, taking a full step back. We were told there was a disturbance." "There is," Isaiah said. He slowly turned his head to look at Patricia. Patricia was trembling. Her legs felt like jelly. She looked at the computer screen, which was now displaying her own employee file next to Isaiah's profile. "Ms. Gould," Isaiah said, his voice echoing in the silent terminal. "Do you know what the Omega Protocol is?" Patricia couldn't speak. She shook her head, tears of panic welling in her eyes. "It's a silent alarm for the board of directors," Isaiah explained, stepping closer to the podium. "It triggers when the owner of the airline is being obstructed from inspecting his own fleet. You see, I'm not flying to London for a vacation. I'm flying there to audit the service standards of our first-class crew. I dress like this so I can see how my staff treats regular people." He picked up the metal card from where Tobias had left it. "And I have to say," Isaiah continued, his eyes cold, "I have never been more disappointed." Patricia's phone rang. It wasn't the internal line. It was her personal cell phone vibrating violently against the desk. Then the desk phone rang. Then Tobias's radio squawked. "Gate B12, this is Central Command." A frantic voice came over the radio. "We have the CEO on the line. He wants to know who the hell is at the podium." Isaiah held out his hand to Patricia. "I think you better answer that. It's probably my son. He's the current CEO. I just own the majority stock." Patricia stared at the ringing phone. She looked at the crowd who were now filming with voracious intensity. She looked at Isaiah, the man she had mocked, the man whose ticket she had thrown on the floor. She realized with a sinking horror that she hadn't just ruined her day. She had just ended her life as she knew it. "Answer it," Isaiah commanded. Shaking, Patricia reached for the phone. "Hello. A voice roared on the other end, loud enough for Tobias to hear standing 3 feet away. "This is Alexander Sterling. Put my father on the phone and then surrender your badge to the nearest officer. You are done." The moment Patricia Gould's badge hit the countertop, the atmosphere in Terminal 4 shifted from curiosity to a palpable electric tension. The click of the plastic ID card landing on the laminate surface sounded like a gavel strike. "Badge. Surrendered," Patricia whispered, her voice barely audible. She looked small now. The severe posture was gone, replaced by a slump that made her look 10 years older. Isaiah Sterling took the phone from her trembling hand. "Alexander, Dad." The voice on the other end was breathless, a mix of panic and fury. "I'm in the boardroom in Chicago. I just got the code black alert. Are you okay? Security is scrambling a tactical team to your location. Call off the tactical team, son," Isaiah said, his voice calm, contrasting sharply with the chaos around him. "I'm fine physically, but the airline is sick, Alexander. We have a culture problem." "I heard," Alexander replied grimly. "The audio from the gate feeds is automatically recorded during a code black. We heard everything. The mockery, the refusal to check the manual, the police call. It's indefensible. I want a full audit of the JFK ground staff," Isaiah said, staring directly at the other gate agents, who were now cowering behind their computers, pretending to work while frantically trying to disappear. "And I want it started today. No one goes home until every protocol is reviewed. If they treat the owner this way because he's wearing a hoodie, how are they treating the single mother trying to get home for a funeral, or the elderly veteran who moves a little slow?" "Consider it done," Alexander said. "Do you want me to ground the flight?" "No," Isaiah said. "The passengers have waited long enough, but I will be boarding first, and I'll be taking Ms. Gould's seat in the cockpit jump seat if I have to, though I suspect a first-class seat has just opened up." Isaiah handed the phone back to Tobias, who looked like he was about to faint. "You, supervisor." "Yes, Mr. Sterling," Tobias squeaked. "Process the boarding. Manually. Apologize to every single passenger for the delay. Personal apologies, Tobias. Look them in the eye." "Yes, sir." "Right away, sir." Tobias scrambled to the microphone, his hands shaking so badly he dropped it once before stammering out a boarding announcement. Isaiah turned back to Patricia. She was standing outside the podium now, escorted by the 2 junior police officers. Sergeant Miller stood by, looking awkward. "Ms. Gould," Isaiah said. Patricia looked up, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "Mr. Sterling, please. I didn't know. I'm a single-income household. I've given 20 years to this company. Please, just a suspension. Don't fire me. I have a mortgage." Isaiah's expression didn't soften. It wasn't cruel, but it was resolute. It was the face of a man who had built an empire by holding people accountable. "You didn't just make a mistake, Patricia. You made a choice," Isaiah said softly. "You chose cruelty because you thought you had power. You thought I was weak, so you tried to crush me. That's not a training issue. That's a character issue." He gestured to the terminal floor. "Pick up the card." "What?" Patricia sniffled. "My card. The one you threw. Pick it up." Patricia hesitated, then slowly bent down. Her knees cracked. She crawled slightly to reach under the velvet rope where the heavy metal card had slid. She grasped it, her fingers brushing the dirty airport carpet. She stood up and handed it to him, with 2 hands, head bowed.
"I'm sorry," she whispered.
Isaiah took the card. "I accept your apology, but you are still fired. Sergeant Miller." "Yes, sir." The officer stepped forward. "Escort Ms. Gould to the perimeter. Ensure she retrieves her personal effects, but she is not to access any company terminals. Her clearance is revoked effectively, immediately." "Understood," Miller said. He gently took Patricia's arm. "Let's go, ma'am." As Patricia was led away, sobbing into her hands, the crowd of passengers who had been dead silent erupted. It started with a slow clap from the back, maybe from the businessman who had told Isaiah to move, and then it swelled into applause. Isaiah didn't acknowledge the applause. He hated it. He didn't do this for show. He turned to the gate reader, where Tobias was waiting. "Zone 1, Isaiah said quietly. "Right this way, Mr. Sterling," Tobias said, bowing low. Isaiah walked down the jet bridge, the heavy metal card tucked safely back in his pocket. But the story wasn't over. Patricia Gould was gone, but the rot in the airport ran deeper than one gate agent. And as Isaiah stepped onto the plane, he saw the flight attendant at the door, a man named Roger, who was currently yelling at an elderly woman for taking too long to stow her cane. Isaiah sighed. It was going to be a long flight. The interior of the Boeing 737 was divided into 2 distinct worlds, separated by a heavy navy blue curtain. Up front in first class, the lighting was warm and amber. The seats lay flat like beds, and the air smelled of fresh linen and expensive champagne. Back in economy, where Isaiah was headed, the air was recycled and stale, smelling faintly of disinfectant and anxiety. Isaiah walked down the narrow aisle, his head bowed slightly to avoid the overhead bins. He was still vibrating with the adrenaline from the gate, but he forced himself to remain calm. His mission wasn't over. Patricia Gould had been a symptom. He needed to see how deep the infection went. At row 34, he found the source of the commotion he had heard from the jet bridge. Roger, the flight attendant, was a man in his 30s with gelled hair so stiff it looked like a helmet. He was standing over an elderly woman who was clutching a worn floral tote bag to her chest. She looked to be in her 80s, her skin like parchment paper, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "I have told you 3 times, ma'am." Roger snapped, his voice dripping with condescension. "That bag does not fit under the seat. It has to be checked. Now." "But it has my insulin." The woman whose name on the manifest Isaiah knew from memory was Beatrice Higgins, whispered. "And my husband's picture. I can't put it in the hold. Please." "If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fly in the cabin," Roger said, reaching for the bag. "Give it here. I'll tag it for the carousel in London. If you wanted space for your trinkets, you should have bought a business-class ticket." "Don't touch it," Beatrice cried out, pulling the bag away. "You are delaying the flight," Roger shouted, causing several passengers nearby to flinch. "Give me the bag or get off the plane." Isaiah stepped into the row. He didn't shout. He didn't puff out his chest. He simply moved with the immovable density of a mountain. He placed his hand gently on the overhead bin, above Beatrice, holding it open. "There is space right here," Isaiah said. Roger spun around, his eyes narrowing as he took in Isaiah's hoodie and the scuffed duffel bag. "Excuse me. This is a crew-designated bin. It's for emergency equipment." Isaiah looked inside. There was a single small tote bag inside. It wasn't emergency equipment. It was a designer Louis Vuitton purse. "Is that Louis Vuitton bag part of the emergency raft kit?" Isaiah asked, his voice dry. Roger flushed a deep crimson. That was his bag. He liked to keep it close to avoid it getting scuffed in the crew locker. "That is none of your business," Roger hissed. "Sit down. Row 34 is not your assigned seat. You are in 42B. "I'm switching," Isaiah said. He looked at the young man sitting next to Beatrice. "Son, would you mind taking 42B? It's an aisle seat. Extra legroom." The young man, sensing the tension and wanting no part of it, nodded vigorously. "Yeah, sure, man. Whatever." He grabbed his backpack and bolted to the back of the plane. Isaiah sat down next to Beatrice. He turned to her and smiled a genuine warm smile that transformed his face. "Mrs. Higgins, keep your bag. Put it under your legs. If anyone tries to take it, they have to go through me." Beatrice looked at him with watery eyes. "Thank you, young man. You're very kind." Roger was fuming. He stood in the aisle, hands on his hips. He wanted to scream. He wanted to call the captain. But they were already 20 minutes late because of the drama at the gate, and the captain had explicitly ordered doors closed, wheels up, no more delays. "Fine," Roger spat. "But don't expect any service. You're disrupting the flow." He grabbed the curtain separating economy from premium economy and yanked it shut with such force that the plastic hooks rattled like gunfire. Isaiah buckled his seatbelt. He watched Roger stomp away toward the first-class galley. "He's a mean one," Beatrice whispered, clutching her bag. "I saved for 3 years to visit my granddaughter in London. I didn't think it would be like this." "It shouldn't be like this," Isaiah said, his jaw tightening. "And it won't be for much longer." As the plane pushed back and taxied to the runway, Isaiah pulled a small leather-bound notebook from his hoodie pocket. He wrote down one name, Roger Sterling, no relation. Then he wrote offense abuse of elderly passenger, unauthorized use of overhead storage for personal luxury items. He closed the book as the engines roared to life. The plane climbed into the gray New York sky banking over the Atlantic. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Usually this was when the crew relaxed. But for Roger and the cabin crew of Flight CA-909, the nightmare was just beginning. They just didn't know it yet. 30 minutes into the flight, the smell of heated meals began to waft through the cabin. For economy, it was the smell of aluminum and pasta sauce. For first class, it was filet mignon and truffle oil. Isaiah watched the service carefully. There were 3 flight attendants in the economy cabin. Roger, a younger woman named Sarah, who looked terrified of Roger, and a man named Ken, who seemed to be asleep on his feet. Roger was working the cart with the aggression of a riot policeman. "Chicken or pasta?" Roger barked at row 30. "Chicken, please," a passenger said. "We're out. Pasta." Roger slammed the tray down. He moved down the aisle, the heavy metal cart bumping into elbows and knees. He didn't apologize once. When he reached row 34, he looked at Isaiah and Beatrice. He pushed the cart past them. "Excuse me," Isaiah said, raising his hand. "You skipped us." Roger didn't turn around. He kept walking to row 35. "I told you, sir. You disrupted the flow. I'll come back if there's anything left." "I need water for my pills," Beatrice said softly. Her hands were shaking. "Please." Roger ignored her. He was busy flirting with a young woman in row 36, laughing loudly and handing her 2 extra mini bottles of wine. Isaiah unbuckled his seatbelt. The fasten seatbelt sign was off, but the turbulence was slight. He stood up. "Sit down," Roger shouted from 2 rows back. Isaiah walked to the rear galley. He didn't go to Roger. He opened the cabinet, grabbed a sealed bottle of water and 2 cups. "Hey." Roger came running down the aisle, abandoning his cart. "That is airline property you are stealing. I'm getting water for an 80-year-old woman because you refused to do your job," Isaiah said calmly, cracking the seal on the bottle. Roger got in Isaiah's face. "You are aggressive. You are non-compliant. I can have you restrained for this. Do you know who is in first class, Mr. Preston Cartwright? He owns half of Manhattan. He needs his service. You are nobody. You are a hoodie in seat 34A. Preston Cartwright. Isaiah repeated the name. He knew Preston. Preston was a pompous real estate mogul who had tried to buy Celestial Airways 5 years ago. Isaiah had laughed him out of the boardroom. "That's right," Roger sneered. "People who matter are in the front. People like you stay in the back and wait your turn. Now give me the water." Roger reached for the bottle. Isaiah didn't let go. "Go check on Mr. Cartwright, Roger. I'm sure he needs his champagne refilled. But Mrs. Higgins is getting this water." Roger tried to yank the bottle away, but Isaiah's grip was iron. The plastic crunched slightly. "Captain!" Roger screamed into the galley phone. "Captain Halloway. We have a code 3 in the rear galley. Passenger is physically aggressive." Beatrice was watching from her seat, terrified. "Please," she called out. "I don't need the water. Just sit down. Don't get in trouble for me." Isaiah looked at her. "It's not trouble, Beatrice. It's justice." The cockpit door at the front of the plane opened. Captain Halloway emerged. He was a large man, red-faced with the look of someone who enjoyed the authority of the uniform a little too much. He marched down the long aisle, past the curtain, past the staring passengers. "What is the problem here?" Halloway boomed. "He assaulted me." Roger lied effortlessly, pointing a shaking finger at Isaiah. "He stole from the galley, pushed me, and refused to follow crew instructions. He's a threat to the safety of this flight." Captain Halloway looked at Isaiah. He saw the same thing Patricia had seen, a black man in a hoodie. He didn't see the calm demeanor. He didn't see the fear in Beatrice's eyes. He saw a disruption. Sir Halloway said, his hand resting on the zip ties attached to his belt. "I am the commander of this aircraft. You will return to your seat immediately, or we will restrain you." "I was getting water," Isaiah said, holding up the bottle. "Your flight attendant refused service to an elderly diabetic passenger." "That is not your call to make," Halloway snapped. "Roger is the lead flight attendant. If he says you wait, you wait. Now sit down." "No," Isaiah said. The cabin gasped. "You didn't say no to a captain." "I'm not sitting down until Mrs. Higgins gets her meal and a medical check. She looks pale," Isaiah said, standing his ground in the narrow galley. Halloway's face turned a darker shade of purple. "Can Roger restrain him? Zip ties. Now." Roger grinned. This was the best part of the job. Putting people in their place. Ken, the sleepy flight attendant, looked hesitant. "Captain, maybe we just give him the water." "That's an order, Ken," Halloway barked. Roger lunged forward, grabbing Isaiah's left arm. He twisted it behind Isaiah's back with unnecessary force. Isaiah didn't fight back physically. He knew better than to turn this into a brawl. He allowed them to push him into the jump seat near the rear lavatory. They pulled his wrists together. The plastic zip ties ratcheted tight, biting into his skin. "Tight enough," Roger whispered in Isaiah's ear. "Or should I cut off the circulation?" "Do what you feel is necessary, Roger," Isaiah said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "But remember this moment. Memorize it." "Why?" Roger laughed, tightening the strap. "Because you're going to sue Good Luck. It's your word against the captain's." They strapped Isaiah into the jump seat facing the aisle. He was on display, a prisoner for the whole plane to see. Beatrice was sobbing in row 34. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Halloway announced over the PA system, "we have contained a security threat in the rear of the aircraft. Please remain seated. We will be contacting authorities to meet us upon landing in London." He glared at Isaiah one last time. "You picked the wrong flight to act tough on, pal." Halloway turned and marched back to the cockpit. Roger gave Isaiah a mock salute and went back to the cart. "Now," Roger announced to the cabin, stepping over Isaiah's feet, "who wants duty-free?" Isaiah sat there, his hands bound. He closed his eyes. He wasn't praying. He was calculating. He shifted his weight. In his back pocket, pressed against the seat, was his phone. He couldn't reach it with his hands. But he didn't need to. He had the black box. The black box wasn't the flight recorder. It was a nickname for a small satellite-enabled pager device that Isaiah carried on his belt, a relic from the 90s that he refused to upgrade because it operated on a military-grade frequency encrypted specifically for Celestial Airways executive overrides. It had one button. Isaiah shifted his hips, wincing as the zip ties dug in. He maneuvered his body against the hard plastic of the jump seat until he felt the device against his hip bone. He pressed his weight against the button. 1 click, 2 clicks. Hold. That was the signal. SOS. CEO. Compromised. 3,000 miles away in the Operations Control Center. OCC in Dallas. A red light began to flash on the master board. The sleepy night shift manager, a guy named Dave, spilled his coffee when the alarm screamed. "We have a chairman down signal," Dave yelled. "Flight CA909. Who is on that bird?" "It's the founder," a tech shouted back, typing furiously. "Isaiah Sterling is on the manifest. Seat 34A. Get me the cockpit via ACARS aircraft communications addressing and reporting system. Now patch me through to the personal satellite phone in the flight deck." Back on the plane, 2 hours had passed. Isaiah's wrists were numb. Roger had made a point of bumping into Isaiah's legs every time he passed by, spilling a little coffee on him, accidentally, once. Beatrice Higgins had tried to bring Isaiah a napkin, but Roger had shouted at her to sit down, or she would be tied up too. Suddenly the chime in the cabin changed. It wasn't the soft bing-bong of a call button. It was a rapid triple chime. Bing, bing, bing. Then the lights in the cabin went to full bright. The in-flight entertainment screens, which had been playing movies, all turned blue. A message appeared on every single screen, from first class to economy priority message from ground control. "Flight deck, answer the sat phone immediately." The passengers murmured. This wasn't normal. In the cockpit, Captain Halloway was eating a steak he had poached from the first-class menu. He stared at the display. What the hell is Dallas doing? The satellite phone, the bat phone, that never rang unless the plane was about to be shot down, began to ring. It was a harsh, mechanical trill. Halloway wiped grease from his mouth and picked it up. "This is Captain Halloway." "Halloway," a voice crackled on the line. It wasn't Dave from Ops. It was Alexander Sterling, the CEO, and he sounded like he was about to reach through the phone and strangle someone. Mr. Sterling." Halloway sat up straighter. "Sir, is there a problem with the aircraft?" "Who is in the rear jump seat?" Alexander asked. His voice was ice. Halloway froze. We had an unruly passenger, sir. Restrained for safety. Standard protocol. He was aggressive with the crew." "Aggressive," Alexander repeated. Did he assault anyone? He touched a flight attendant. He refused orders. Did you ID him? Alexander asked. No, sir. He's a nobody. Just a guy in a hoodie. There was a pause on the line. A pause so long and heavy that Holloway felt sweat bead on his forehead. Captain Holloway, Alexander said softly, the man you have zip-tied in the rear jump seat is my father, Isaiah Sterling, the man who signed your paycheck last week, the man who bought the plane you are currently flying. Holloway dropped the fork. It clattered onto the floor. That's impossible. He's in a hoodie. He's sitting in economy. My father is auditing the airline, Alexander continued, and you, Captain, have just failed the audit in the most spectacular fashion in the history of this company. Sir, Shut up, Alexander snapped. Here are your orders. You will walk back there. You will cut those ties yourself. You will apologize, and then you will surrender command of the aircraft to First Officer Jenkins. Surrender command mid-flight. Holloway gasped. That's mutiny. No, Captain. That's me saving you from being arrested for kidnapping when you land. Jenkins is qualified. You are relieved of duty. If you do not comply, I will have the RAF escort you down when you enter UK airspace. Do you understand? Holloway swallowed. His throat felt like sandpaper. Understood. The line went dead. Holloway sat there for a moment, the blood rushing in his ears. He looked at First Officer Jenkins, a sharp woman who had been silently judging Holloway the entire flight. You heard him, Jenkins said, reaching for her headset. I have the controls, Captain. Get out of the seat. Holloway stood up on shaky legs. He walked out of the cockpit. He felt like he was walking to the gallows. He passed through the curtain. He saw Roger, who was laughing with Preston Cartwright in row 1. Captain? Roger smiled. Is everything okay? We saw the screens. Holloway ignored him. He walked down the aisle. The passengers watched him. He looked sick. He reached the back of the plane. Isaiah was still sitting there, calm eyes open, watching Holloway approach. Roger trailed behind. Captain, did we get approval to divert? Are we dumping him in Iceland? Holloway reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of wire cutters from the emergency kit. He knelt down in front of Isaiah. The entire economy cabin stretched their necks to see. Why was the captain kneeling? Roger Holloway croaked. Yes, Captain. Shut up, Holloway said. He looked at Isaiah. Mr. Sterling. I didn't know. Roger's smile vanished. Mr. Who? Mr. Sterling, Holloway repeated, cutting the plastic tie on Isaiah's left wrist, then the right. The owner. The zip ties fell to the floor. Isaiah rubbed his wrists. They were bruised red. He stood up. He was tall, and in the confined space of the galley, he loomed over the captain and the flight attendant. Roger! Isaiah said, his voice returning to that deep, rumbling timbre. Roger was trembling. He looked at Holloway, then at Isaiah. The hoodie suddenly didn't look cheap anymore. It looked like a disguise. I was just following protocol, Roger stammered. The manual says to treat every passenger with dignity. Isaiah interrupted. I wrote the manual, Roger. I wrote it in 1982 on a napkin in a diner. I don't recall the chapter where we refuse water to grandmothers. Isaiah stepped past them. He didn't go to first class. He didn't go to the cockpit. He walked back to row 34. Mrs. Higgins, Isaiah said. Beatrice looked up, wiping her eyes. Are you okay? I'm fine, Isaiah said. He turned to Roger. Bring Mrs. Higgins the first-class meal, the filet mignon, and a bottle of sparkling water, and bring me a coffee, black."
"Yes. Yes, sir," Roger whispered, sprinting toward the front galley like his life depended on it. Isaiah sat back down in economy. He looked at the captain, who was still standing there, looking lost. "Captain Holloway," Isaiah said, "go sit in the crew rest bunk. You are a passenger for the remainder of this flight." Holloway nodded, head hung low, and shuffled away. The cabin remained silent for a long moment. Then the young man in 42B stood up and started clapping. It spread like wildfire. But Isaiah didn't smile. He looked at the red marks on his wrists. The karma had started, but the landing was going to be the real show. The descent into London Heathrow was usually a routine affair, a gradual glide over the grey patchwork of the English countryside, followed by the dull thud of landing gear deploying. But on flight CA 909, the atmosphere was anything but routine. The silence in the cabin was heavy, charged with a mixture of confusion, vindication, and sheer curiosity. In the rear galley, Roger sat on a metal canister, his head in his hands. The arrogance that had fueled him for the last 6 hours had evaporated, leaving behind a cold, shaking dread. He had tried to serve Isaiah coffee 20 minutes ago, his hands trembling so violently that he spilled it on the tray. Isaiah hadn't even looked up. He just stared out the window, watching the clouds break apart. Captain Holloway was in the crew rest bunk, a small, coffin-like space above the main cabin. He wasn't sleeping. He was staring at the ceiling, replaying the phone call from Alexander Sterling over and over in his mind. Surrender command. Those words were a death sentence for a pilot's career. He wasn't just losing his job, he was losing his identity. Up in the cockpit, First Officer Jenkins handled the controls with icy precision. She keyed the radio. "Heathrow Tower, Celestial 909, established on the localizer for 27R. "Celestial 909 Tower," the controller replied, his voice sounding uncharacteristically grave. "You are cleared to land. Be advised, we have been instructed to direct you to a remote stand. You will be met by ground authorities. Do not, I repeat, do not deplane passengers until instructed." "Copy that, Tower," Jenkins said. She glanced at the empty captain's seat. "Looks like the welcoming committee is ready." When the wheels touched the tarmac, there was no applause from the passengers. Usually on a long-haul flight, people clapped. Today they held their breath. The massive Boeing 787 taxied past the busy terminals, moving away from the usual gates. It rolled toward a secluded section of the tarmac, usually reserved for cargo or diplomatic flights. Through the windows, the passengers saw the flashing blue lights. Not just 1 or 2 cars. It looked like a blockade. 3 black SUVs with diplomatic plates were parked alongside 4 Metropolitan Police cruisers. A mobile staircase was already being driven up to the aircraft. Roger peeked out the porthole window in the door. His face went pale white. "Oh God," he whispered. "They sent the Met." The seatbelt sign pinged off, but nobody moved. First Officer Jenkins's voice came over the PA system, calm and authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We have been directed by local authorities to pause here. Please keep the aisles clear." The cabin door hissed open. The rush of cold London air filled the plane, cutting through the stale, recycled oxygen. Roger stood by the door, trying to compose himself. He smoothed his uniform, forcing a smile that looked more like a rictus of terror. Maybe he could talk his way out of this. He was the lead flight attendant after all. He was just following orders. 2 officers from the Metropolitan Police's Aviation Security Command stepped onto the plane. They were wearing high-visibility jackets and carried submachine guns strapped across their chests. Behind them walked a man in a sharp, bespoke Navy suit, Mr. Elias Thorne, the European Director of Operations for Celestial Airways. Thorne didn't look happy. He looked like a man who had been woken up at 3:00 a.m. by a billionaire. "Who is the lead flight attendant?" Thorne asked, his voice clipping the air. Roger stepped forward, his voice cracking. "I am, sir. Roger Banks. Listen, there has been a massive misunderstanding. The passenger in 34A was aggressive, and the captain ordered—" Thorne held up a hand. "Stop." He looked at the police officers. "Secure him." "What?" Roger gasped, as one of the officers spun him around. "Wait, you can't arrest me. I didn't do anything. I was protecting the flight. You are being detained for assault, false imprisonment, and gross negligence," the officer said, snapping handcuffs onto Roger's wrists. The metal click echoed through the silent cabin. Thorne walked past Roger without a second glance. He moved down the aisle, his eyes scanning the rows, until he found row 34. Isaiah Sterling was sitting quietly, his hands resting on his knees. The red marks from the zip ties were still visible, angry welts against his skin. Beside him, Mrs. Beatrice Higgins looked terrified by the police presence. Thorne stopped. He bowed his head, a gesture of deep, genuine respect that shocked the nearby passengers. "Mr. Sterling," Thorne said softly, "on behalf of the European Division, I am mortified. We have a medical team waiting at the bottom of the stairs." Isaiah stood up. He groaned slightly as he stretched his stiff back. "I don't need a doctor, Elias. I need a new management team." "It's already being arranged, sir," Thorne replied. "Alexander has suspended the entire regional HR department pending an investigation." Isaiah turned to Beatrice. He offered her his hand. "Come on, Mrs. Higgins. I don't think we need to wait for the rest of the passengers to deplane." "Am I in trouble?" Beatrice whispered, clutching her floral bag. "With the police?" "No, my dear." Isaiah smiled warmly. "You are the guest of honor." As they walked down the aisle, the passengers began to realize what was happening. The homeless man wasn't being arrested. He was being escorted like royalty. "Hey." The young man in 42B stood up. "That's Isaiah Sterling. That's the guy who started the company. I saw him on a documentary." A murmur rippled through the plane. Phones came out. Flashbulbs went off. Isaiah ignored the cameras. He guided Beatrice to the front of the plane. But before he exited, he stopped at the galley where Captain Halloway was now standing, looking defeated, flanked by 2 more police officers. Halloway looked up. His eyes were red. "Mr. Sterling," he choked out. "I have a family. My pension—" Isaiah looked at him. There was no hate in his eyes, only a cold, hard disappointment. "You had a duty of care, Captain." Isaiah said, his voice low enough that only Halloway could hear. "Not just to the plane, but to the people inside it. You saw a hoodie, and you saw a threat. You didn't look closer. That blindness is dangerous in a pilot. You're grounded, Halloway. Permanently." Isaiah turned and walked out the door onto the metal stairs. The wind whipped at his hoodie. Below on the tarmac, a black Range Rover was waiting with its rear door open. But Isaiah didn't go to the car immediately. He stopped on the tarmac and waited for Roger and Halloway to be led down. It was a slow procession. Roger was sobbing openly now, pleading with the officers. Halloway walked with his head down, shielding his face from the press cameras that were zooming in from the terminal fence line. They were loaded into the back of a police van, a stark contrast to the luxury hotel shuttle they were used to. Isaiah turned to Elias Thorne. "Ensure Mrs. Higgins gets her insulin immediately, then drive her to her granddaughter's house in the company car. Fill the trunk with gifts, champagne chocolates, whatever she wants." "And you, sir?" Thorne asked. "We have the suite at the Savoy ready." Isaiah looked at the Range Rover, then at the bustling airport terminal, filled with regular people rushing to get home. "Cancel the Savoy," Isaiah said. "I'm going to take the Heathrow Express into the city. I need to clear my head." "Sir, is that wise, after everything?" "It's necessary," Isaiah said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the heavy metal legacy card. He looked at it for a moment, then slipped it back in. "I built this company for everyone, Elias. Somewhere along the way, we started thinking we were better than the people we serve. I need to remember what it feels like to just be a passenger." He turned to Beatrice, who was being helped into the luxury SUV by a solicitous medical attendant. "Goodbye, Beatrice," he called out. She rolled down the window. "Thank you, Isaiah. Will I see you again?" "Count on it," Isaiah winked. "I owe you a flight where the coffee actually stays in the cup." As the SUV drove away and the police van sped off in the other direction, with sirens wailing, Isaiah adjusted his backpack. He walked toward the terminal entrance, merging with the crowd of tired travelers. Inside the terminal, the news was already playing on the giant monitors. The headline flashed in bold red: "Celestial Airways CEO goes undercover. Staff arrested at Heathrow." Isaiah stopped and watched for a second. The screen showed blurry footage taken by a passenger the moment Isaiah stood up to Roger in the galley. A woman standing next to Isaiah watching the screen shook her head. "Good for him," she muttered. "I hate how they treat us sometimes." She didn't look at Isaiah. She just saw an old black man in a hoodie. "Yeah," Isaiah said softly, smiling to himself. "I hate it too." He turned and walked toward the train station, a ghost in his own kingdom, ready to rebuild it from the ground up. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of how one man brought an entire airline to its knees without throwing a single punch. Isaiah Sterling proved that dignity isn't something you buy with a first-class ticket. It's something you carry inside you. Captain Halloway and Roger learned the hard way that when you judge someone by their appearance, you might just be judging the person who signs your checks. Beatrice Higgins got a lifetime of free flights, but more importantly, she got her dignity back. The police investigation revealed that this wasn't the first time Roger had bullied passengers, and thanks to Isaiah, it was definitely the last. What would you have done if you were in Isaiah's shoes? Would you have revealed your identity sooner, or would you have let the trap snap shut just like he did? Let me know in the comments below. If you want more stories where karma hits hard and justice is served, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We upload new real-life drama stories every Tuesday and Friday. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you're the first to see next week's story. Billionaire bans his own wife from the country club. She returns as the new owner. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.